Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and today I'm here with Josiah back to discuss JD Vance, the current Republican nominee for vice president, Donald Trump's running mate, and he is currently the senator of Ohio, which is so he is Josiah's senator. So I thought he'd be a perfect person to discuss the man and get his perspective. So, Josiah, what do you think about JD Vance overall? What's your impression of him?
I think JD Vance is the best national electoral politician we've had in at least a decade, probably my lifetime.
So, in the sense that he, appeals to sort of the working class, uh, or sort of the Rust Belts as well as other states, or what specifically?
I think JD Vance actually cares about the poor in a way that um, is not condescending. Something that's really frustrating is a lot of Republicans think of social issues, but don't think of the lower classes and how those social issues affect the lower classes. Or what their economic policies do to the culture of lower economic classes. And JD Vance clearly does not fall into that. He clearly cares and clearly wants to make the lives of those people better.
JD Vance is also the author of Hillbilly Elegy,
It's so
which
good.
which I've been listening to as of late, and it's quite an amazing story.
It's really
Um,
good. Yeah.
yeah, and it's kind of interesting because people on like liberals kind of can't understand how it comes from a conservative or
Yeah.
right wing person.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think the disconnect there is?
Um, the disconnect is probably the same disconnect between like JD and his grandmother and his grandfather in that book, where they never considered not voting Democrat because it was the party of the working man. And I think the Democrat Party still considers themselves the party of the working man and cannot fathom that the working man no longer wants anything to do with them, because that that class of people, especially white lower class people, the white lower like working class people, um, know when you hate them. Like you can tell when somebody's looking down on you and thinks you're lesser or a piece of, like, thinks of you as human garbage, thinks of you as white trash, and they know that. And I would say in the past that the choice was like between people who thought you were white trash and people who um, thought you were white trash, but were at least going to propose some economic policies that might benefit you. And since Donald Trump in 2015, there's been a palpable shift in the way the working class views the Democrat Party, because it was viewed as Trump was viewed as somebody who actually cared about the white working class or the working classes in general, um, and this comes to fruition with the pick of JD Vance as vice president. I think, yeah, I think that shift. I think that the Democrats want to hold on to their position as the working class party and are not yet realizing that what's happened in the last decade is that they have lost that and they've become the party of um, working class cities. So, I think maybe in the past what we had is like two parties based on economic classes, and now what we have is two parties based more on geographic locations.
People or some people say that the Democratic Party became detached from the working class because of Bill Clinton, at least starting with Bill Clinton, because he basically started favoring the wealthy business owners.
I mean, that could be
What do you
true.
think about that?
That could be true, but I don't think that the working class started voting like the portion of like white working class people voting for George Bush in like historically blue dog Democrat districts was really low. You know, Obama, like for I
Yeah.
grew up in Indiana for like I a lot of people forget like Obama in 2008 was insane. Like Obama won Indiana. You know, like that's it. I don't think we've had. If I had to look at it, I don't think we've had a Democrat governor in years. I mean, and like that is a like Indiana is like very much a white working class state. I mean, there's like one small city, and the rest of it is like mid-sized suburban cities, basically. But you know, like and then farmland. And Obama won in 2008. Um,
Yeah. So and with JD Vance, it does seem like he can appeal to, these working class, but also the maybe standard, for the most part, Republican voter as well, at
yeah,
least on like
yeah,
social issues, as well as maybe gun control and stuff like that.
exactly. I think I really do think that's the case. Like, okay, hold on. When is the last time Indiana? Let's see. When is the last time Indiana had elected a Democrat governor?
It used to be Ohio that was sort of the decider of where the election was going to go.
I mean, it still is. It's still a bellwether state. I'm just saying, like in general.
Well, no, yeah, but this last election was the first one it did not predict in like a really long time.
Okay, I didn't. That doesn't shock me. I mean, the swinging of Michigan and Wisconsin through, shall we say, methods. Um, yeah,
Well, it used to be where, like, it was North versus South.
yeah. So 2003 was the last time Indiana elected a Democrat governor. So, yeah.
That's not like that's not terribly distant, exactly.
No, it's not terribly distant. But what's interesting is we had a Republican governor when Obama won
Well,
Indiana.
yeah, I mean, Obama was just probably a. I mean, he was also anti-war, at least on paper.
Nominally, yeah.
Yeah, on paper he was anti-war, and Mitt Romney. It was McCain. Was it McCain? McCain was in
McCain in 2008, yeah.
or 2008. Yeah, and McCain was the sort of a perfect poster boy for the pro-war side.
Yeah, that's fair.
He was the Nikki Haley of the time. And I've heard it said that from people who have some good connections, that up until the assassination attempt against Trump, it was probably going to be Marco Rubio.
I've heard that. That wouldn't shock me. I do doubt it because Don Jr.'s favorite all the way through was JD Vance.
Well, is Don Jr. the number one advisor?
I think so. Based on the way he's talking, yeah. I mean, he was talking. He interviewed with he was on Michael Knowles' show the day after the pick and was saying like, yeah, I was the guy against everyone else saying pick JD Vance.
Well, is it possible that after the sort of the assassination attempt, it just pushed him into the Don Jr. camp? It's very possible.
It could be, yeah. I think Don Jr. wanted JD Vance because he knew the VP pick was the heir apparent, and maybe there was some other people who wanted a more expedient election winning pick. And yeah, I think you're right. I think what could have happened is the original main factor was election winnability, and that's Rubio. But with the assassination attempt at the time, it felt like Trump was just now a shoo-in, so you could just pick the heir apparent, so you could have your hand-picked 28 nominee, who is which was Vance, which like was the guy that was, I mean, pretty clearly since the top 8 was announced, I think it was pretty clear that like the guy who would be the next Trump, like actually be able to carry the torch, is Vance out of those 8 that were announced. So
Well, the real question is, what would Marco Rubio get Trump even electorally that JD Vance isn't
stability,
going to get him?
stability.
Not votes.
I'm not convinced. No.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he gets him. I mean, he gets more votes, I think, because of stability.
Okay.
And he's a known factor, if that makes sense. Like JD Vance is an unknown factor, and we're seeing that right now with people like discovering that JD Vance. You know, there was that tweet a couple days ago where Dave Portnoy, the president of Barstool, lost his mind because JD Vance said we should shape our tax policy to encourage things we like and discourage things we don't like. If you don't have children, you should pay more in taxes than people who do have children, and we should have tax funded programs to help parents. And Dave Portnoy was like losing his mind over the fact that his tax, like he should be he who is like a like tens of millionaire who spends all his time gambling on sports or on the stock market and sleeping with women half his age, should have to pay more money so that society can make sure that the next generation grows up well. Like that is a position that is obvious to anyone who is conservative in the way that you and I are conservative, but not obvious to anyone who is conservative in the way it's been historically considered in national electoral politics, which is primarily economic. So I think what the JD Vance pick is doing is it's signifying the shift and the commitment to a kind of economics which is focused on using economics as a tool. Whereas the Rubio pick would be focused on just having a known factor who would be loyal and wouldn't derail the presidency. Like he wouldn't support, like the main thing for the VP pick was like, is it going to be the next Pence? Is it going to be the guy who like sides with the deep state? And it was like, Rubio's not going to do that, but he's also a known factor. So he's not like, there's not like a ton of stuff out there that people are going to be shocked that he said. And, you know, he's got over a decade of experience now and stuff like that. But I think that's probably why they wanted him originally, but I just don't. I'm excited about Vance. Vance is going to get less votes, and Vance will probably lose some voters, to be honest with you. I think it's already happening. Yeah, I mean, there are like people talking about this on all social medias that I've seen, and like YouTube videos and stuff where people are like, there's like married women who are being like, as a married woman, I'm offended on behalf of my single friends. And it's like, or I got in an argument when I posted that thing I posted on Twitter yesterday. That's like, I think it's up to like 250,000 views now.
Yes, you got ratioed. Dude,
it's so funny. I got an argument with some guy whose username was like St. Joseph Appreciator. So he's Catholic, but he was saying that like Trump and his supporters should, it's at 408,000 views. Okay. Trump and his supporters should be more likable. And it was like, one, I don't care. Like the point of what I'm saying is like, who cares about elections? Let's just not give these people any power. And two, even if the point is elections, like you're proving my point that elections are a dumb way to decide things. If people who can't get beyond likability and like who can't see that it's obviously true that, you know, maternal instincts should not be used to run the largest bureaucracy, maternal instincts that are not like that the largest bureaucracy known to humanity should be an outlet for the maternal instincts of people who are choosing to not have children, right?
Yeah,
And what's even funnier is that clip about cat ladies. The next thing he says is, and I recognize that there are people who, like, I'm not talking about people who want to have kids and can't. Like, I'm talking about people who choose not to have kids. And, like, that's obviously true. You should not get to use the largest bureaucracy in the world, the biggest and most complex machine ever built for governing human beings as an outlet for your parental instincts. Like, that's obviously true. And it's not likable. And it's a thing that national electoral politicians should be saying. So, like, also, you know, a politician who is likable to the majority of Americans currently, that is a disqualifier for me. Like, if you don't rub the majority of Americans the wrong way, or at least like a significant plurality of them, if you don't rub them the wrong way in some, like, in some form, like, I don't trust you. There's something wrong.
yeah. I mean, you can't. That kind of person who doesn't offend is not a leader in any capacity.
Yeah.
You're basically a follower, or
Yeah.
you're just going along with the pack.
Yeah.
That guy was proving my point this morning, that believing in democracy is like believing in the tooth fairy. It's a nice story, but it's not real, and it's not feasible.
Yeah. And I mean, there are people who are like, I mean, I've had people being like, well, we should discipline the Republican Party for taking abortion off the platform. Like, my guy, they lost in 2020. The people who wrote the platform don't believe the election was stolen. Okay? Only Trump and Trump's camp believe the election was stolen. And there is a difference between Trump's camp and there's a difference between Trump's camp and the RNC. And the RNC is the people who wrote that platform. Trump had some say, and Trump took out abortion, right? But, like, Trump took out abortion because he thinks he's not left enough. And the Republican Party clearly thinks they're not left enough. Otherwise, they wouldn't be having, like, an actual currently, like, a porn star who is currently still making content, right? It's not like they had Nala on, or whatever her name is, to talk about, like, the dangers of pornography in America and how she's reformed. Like, they had Amber Rose on, who, like, while she was on stage speaking, there were tweets from her account, like, linking a sale to her OnlyFans. Like, do you really think if they lose, the lesson they're going to take is, I guess we weren't right, I guess we should be more conservative next time around? Like, if you think that, the stupid Apple AI is, like, seeing a thumbs up and being like, look, there it is again. Yeah.
Doing it again. Okay.
If you think that, like, bro, what world are you living in if you think the Republican Party in 2024 losing an election is going to teach them to be more right-wing? The Republican Party in 2024 losing an election with the two most right-wing candidates, like, in decades on their ticket, like, the two most right-wing candidates on the top of the Republican ticket, running across the board, like, running at the top of the party in decades. If they lose, if the two most I'm going to say it again because I'm trying to drive this point home. If the two most right-wing candidates, like, independently, they're more right-wing than everybody else, and they're both at the top now of the whole ticket. And if the Republicans get washed out, you think the lesson they're going to learn is we should be more conservative? No. The lesson the party is going to take from that is we need to make sure that we don't let populism make a decision next in 2028, and we need to choose our candidate now and start doing programming on our voters so that we get the guy we want. And it'll be Nikki Haley. Like, I don't think people realize this. If you don't vote for Trump, you are voting for Nikki Haley for the 2028 Republican presidential nomination. If you do vote for Trump, you're voting for JD Vance to be the 2028 presidential nominee. Like JD Vance is a shoo-in in 28 if you vote for Trump if Trump wins this cycle. If he loses, it will be Nikki Haley. Like, mark my words, it'll be Nikki Haley or somebody worse if Trump doesn't win. Because the lesson the party will take is we can't trust these populist types. We got to go back to war and rubbing up to Wall Street and corporations. Like that's the lesson the party's going to take.
Yeah, I'm just happy he didn't pick someone like Carrie Lake as his running mate.
I was slightly worried it was going to be a woman so that he could like court the like AWFL vote.
But yes, JD Vance is most likely the shoe-in for the next nominee, because this is Trump.
If he wins. If he loses, here's the other thing. It's not that just that JD Vance doesn't get the nomination in 28 if Trump doesn't win this cycle. Vance's national political career is over.
Yeah.
And so, like, as Catholics, you have to consider, do you want the guy who's publicly admitting that he thinks Catholic social teaching should be the way we should govern to have no political future at all? Like, you think somebody else is just going to come along? How naive are you?
Yeah. And, but do you think his sort of coming out about sort of abortion pills and stuff like that?
I don't think he said any of it. I think everybody who said it should be ashamed of themselves. Because I looked it up. I looked up the actual quotes.
I thought there was an interview in which he said he wanted it to be left to the states, or am I wrong?
No, that's not what he said. That's what everybody's saying he said, because those are the exact words, but they're contextualizing it in a way that says almost the opposite of what he said.
Okay, I thought I lost
the Meet the Press interview. The Meet the Press interview asked about mifepristone. Okay, there were two questions about mifepristone. The first one was, do you agree with the Supreme Court's decision? And the direct quote is like, President Trump agrees with that opinion, and I agree with that opinion. Now, that phrasing is very important because the opinion of the court had nothing to do with mifepristone. The opinion of the Supreme Court was that the plaintiff had no standing to bring the case.
Okay.
JD Vance is a Yale-educated attorney.
So he's playing loopholes.
So JD Vance saying, I agree with the opinion of the court, is not saying, I think mifepristone should be used for abortion. Then the interviewer asked him, I just want to clarify, do you think mifepristone should be available? And he said, yes, it should be available. He didn't say to use for abortion, and there are other uses for that drug. It's used for Cushing's treatment. It's used for blood sugar treatment. I think it's used for blood pressure treatment. Like, the drug is not only used for abortion. There is no place where he's contradicted his previous statement that he would like to see the one thing is he said he would like to see a national abortion ban. The statement on states is he said that we should the issue is in the states, and I think that's where it should be, because I think we have to have some respect for the political process. That's nowhere saying that states should be allowing abortion. That's a statement on the pragmatic, and the next thing he says is, we clearly need to have a national conversation on abortion, and I think Donald Trump is the leader to have that conversation. None of those statements are contrary to, I would like to see a national abortion ban. He's talking about methods, he's talking about legal definitions, and he's talking about availability of a medication. Nothing he said in any of those statements is, I'm pro-choice now. Everybody is reading it that way because there are people who, because the pro-life movement as a whole, which I'm clearly pro-life and I clearly support the pro-life movement, but the pro-life movement has taken single issue voting to, if you don't make our issue the center of your platform, we won't support you. And if you say anything to try to soothe non-single issue voters, we're also going to come at you. Because that's what's happening. JD Vance is saying things in a very specific way as an attorney says things. An attorney, keep in mind, this is a Yale-educated attorney who clerked for federal judges. Okay? So he's clerked in the federal judicial system. He's educated as an attorney at Yale. His wife is an attorney. He's worked as an attorney for over a decade, and now he's a senator. The guy is saying, when he says something, you can't just read into it whatever you want. You have to pay attention to what he actually said, because people like that don't just spout off at the mouth and say whatever's in their mind. They say things very specifically, and they mean the words very specifically. And instead of, as fellow Catholics, giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying, you know what, there is an interpretation of this statement which is in line with church teaching, they did the opposite, and they assumed that because he was okay, he liked Trump, that he must be pro-choice. I'm sorry. Like I think if
I'm not really sure who you're apologizing to, because I don't disagree with you.
I'm just apologizing in general for like
Okay.
coming, like saying like, I'm just like, I'm sorry, but I don't see this. Like, I'm not seeing
Yeah.
how it's morally justifiable to assume ill of another Catholic, a brother in Christ, when there are morally licit interpretations of what he said.
Okay. Yeah. No, just I'm just glad everyone else is hearing it, and I'm glad I'm hearing it as well.
Yeah.
In this situation, because yeah, I mean, it didn't change my mind about his candidacy or anything like that. I just thought the way it was being addressed, and you put a great case for why it's being misinterpreted. That
Well, here's the other thing.
Okay.
I'll say this. I'll say this. I think it's incredibly imprudent to try to push for a national abortion ban this election cycle.
Okay. Yeah.
The Republicans polling going into the 22 midterms took a huge hit with the Dobbs decision. So it's clearly an issue which is not popular on the national stage. So to make it a central part of the platform would be political suicide for the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas to just not address it as a central part, but to say we're going to leave it to the states, is considered the moderate position currently. And it also, I would like to see abortion banned nationally. But let's be honest, we're not going to get that in the next 40 years. Like, I honestly think that the lifespan, like the life expectancy of America, the United States of America currently, is smaller than the amount of time it would take to nationally get enough national support for a across the board abortion ban.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, like, it seems to me that this election is less about let's get a national abortion ban when we know it's the least popular issue in the politically conservative, repertoire, and more about let's maintain our seat at the table as Christians who are politically involved and politically aware. And how do you maintain your seat at the table? You maintain your seat at the table by supporting the people who don't want to take your seat away from you and then shoot you.
Well said. I do think there's also an argument to be made that it makes the most sense for state bans, anyways, given the fact that murder is a state law.
Yeah, murder is a state and
Yeah,
that's why
there's no federal murder ban.
There's no federal law against murder. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there is, but it's like for national waters and like national parks
Okay.
and yeah.
It's
but
on national,
but it's on national land.
Yeah.
So once again, when Vance says we have to have some respect for the political process, I think maybe you don't understand how the United States legal system works if you think that that's a pro-choice statement.
Do you think this is also just an example of sort of subsidiarity being a part of his manner or his thought process?
It could be that. I think JD Vance probably would be okay with a federal abortion ban. I think he probably is okay with it. I think he is aware, if there was a possibility to actually pass a federal abortion ban, I think he would say that's a good thing. But because there's clearly not, he's saying that it's okay for states to do it. I would like to see abortion federally banned, And the reason I would like to see that is because subsidiarity only applies when if the lower authority is not governing property, the higher steps in. So like it would be ideal if the United States of America would, like if the federal government would step in and say, sorry, California, the infanticide will stop now. Like you can't sacrifice any more babies to Moloch. Get over it. Like that would be ideal. But that's not going to happen because, I mean, the federal government is just as, if not more liberal than the blue states. So like, I want abortion banned federally. I keep saying it because I'm going to say things where people are going to be like, he doesn't actually, like, he's not actually pro life. And it's like, no, I want it banned federally. But to me, if abortion is a losing issue in a national election, and the politicians who are pro life can't campaign on it because it's a losing election, then the people leading that's a failure of the people leading the pro life movement. And they're like not doing their job. And then they're blaming the people who are trying to like not lose, you know, for you understand does that make sense? Does you
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Like, like if there's if we have a bunch of national pro-life leaders who, I agree, I agree with the USCCB, I agree with the church. Abortion is the biggest moral issue of our time. But if your entire mission in life, like as national pro-life leadership or like pro-life movements, is to, like, if your entire mission in life is to like change the minds and hearts of Americans on abortion, and the polling says that if you campaign on abortion, you will lose catastrophically, and you're the people who are supposed to be changing minds and hearts, it seems like you're the failure, not the politician. And I realize that's harsh, but the question once again is, do you want to try to campaign on an issue that you know will lose? And if you keep campaigning on it, if we were to, let's say 2016, Trump wins, and 2020, Trump gets harder on abortion. He gets harder, like he goes even harder on abortion, right? He goes even harder on abortion in 2020 after seating all those Supreme Court justices, okay? And he loses. Or I think, like let's say Trump goes even harder on abortion in 2020. He would have lost that election fairly, I think. Like 2022, the GOP campaigned on abortion in the state as a state level issue. At a national level, they campaigned on, we're going to leave this at the states. We have no desire for a national ban. But the Democrat campaign line of they are going to ban it nationally if you give them Congress worked.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that after the Dobbs decision, and we know for a fact the polling is there, the numbers are there, that the Democrat federal ban, the Democrat scaremongering about a federal abortion ban worked, that you want to campaign on it again? That is so naive. I can't comprehend. Like, I can't comprehend how one comes to that conclusion, honestly. Like, it should be a part of the platform, and they shouldn't have turned their backs on it. Like, they went too far turning their back on it totally. And they went too far taking it out of the platform. And I feel that way about gay marriage too. But like, I feel like it's our fault as everyday people who are trying to change the hearts and minds of our neighbors that this is a losing issue, that we're not adequately evangelizing our culture. If abortion and gay marriage are continually losing political issues and they get worse every cycle, that's not an indication of failed politicians so much as it is an indication of failed Christians failing at evangelism. And the guys who just want to make sure that, like, just want to slow the collapse down or just want to protect us from the people who hate us, it seems like lashing out at them is wildly out of place.
Yeah, this is one of democracies is really biggest weak spots is because if you're saying a government by the people, putting the people, the people are electing the people to become their
Government basic
representatives.
democracy basically means
By the people, for the
government
people. Yeah.
by the people for the people. Yes. Um, but the people are
Okay.
nobody. There are going to be a significant portion of your audience that is not going to get that joke at all.
It's true. Yes. If you, it's it's a meme. So
Yeah, but
look
yeah, no,
look it up at your peril. Um,
yeah. I think also I do think this is
well,
this
can I
one.
finish what I was
Yeah.
saying?
Go ahead.
Just you turned
Sorry.
into a meme. Um, Democracy, when you have the people, when you place power within with the people to elect their representatives are often going to reflect them. And when the people are not evangelizing, when the sort of when Catholics aren't evangelizing properly to their fellow countrymen, you're not going to get the results you want, no matter how much you sort of whine about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, here's a good another good like indication of this is like immigrate a more extreme immigrate the immigration policy in the 2024 platform is less extreme than 2020, but it's definitely more extreme than 2016. Um, well, it's about the same as 2016, um, but it's definitely way more extreme of like 2012 and 2008 Republicans. Um, and in 2016, that was the main issue, like that Trump voters supported him on.
Yeah, and it
So
didn't get
like,
fixed.
and it didn't get fixed, right? Which is why he
Yeah.
campaigned on it again in 2020. And like, that's one of the biggest failures of Trump's presidency is not fixing like the main issue, like not doing enough to address of immigration in 2016 from 2016 to 2020 is like Trump's biggest failure as president. And the reason that is because it was his most popular issue. But the point I'm making is just 4 or 5 years or just 4 or 8 years earlier, just one or two presidential elections prior, like that position, the position he took would have been total suicide. And like the the mind of the culture and the mind of like specifically working class people was able to be changed on immigration to the point now that like it's a pretty normal like the position of most normie Republicans in 2012 was like shouldn't immigrate illegally, but we should have more legal immigrants. And now the position of most normie, like the middle of the road Republicans is shouldn't immigrate illegally. We should deport all the illegals. We definitely shouldn't give anybody any citizenship. And we should have less legal immigration. Like that issue was like the mind of the voters was changed on that issue. So like it's not just like it's not impossible to change the minds of the voter on that issue, on an issue. But it's just not happening on abortion. And so like it's a and I feel bad about this, but it is a losing issue. And so while I agree that they should not have taken it out of the platform and like they definitely shouldn't have backed off of it, and Trump's position on abortion I think is wrong. I think he's like got an evil position on abortion. To be willing to throw the entire election away on that when we haven't done our part and we know that we will lose our seat at the table and lose our ability to actually make a difference long term if we do throw the election away, it just seems really naive to me. It just seems really naive.
Yeah. And I mean, JD Vance is like, or I guess both Trump and Vance, like I can't imagine they'll have any worse judges. Like, I bet they'll appoint sort of a similar level of, or maybe better judges in,
Well, Pence picked a
in
lot
the
of the
next one.
judges.
Well, but
Like that was the best thing about Pence is that Pence is super pro-life. Pence is very, very pro-life, and Pence picked a lot of the judges, right? So, like, if Vance is the one picking the judges again, Like that's a really good, like if the judge, if federal judicial pickment choices get as much like say from the VP position, like Vance is Vance is our best bet for that position. Like who do you want advising the president on federal judicial appointments? The guy who said my opinion on the ideal state lines up pretty exactly with Catholic social teaching. That's a direct quote. Like that's the guy I want advising the president on picking federal judges.
Yeah, definitely. And so I would say Vance would pick better judges than Pence overall. And
yeah, because Pence is a regime evangelical, and Pence is and Vance is not.
I've never heard regime evangelical.
Oh, really? Okay, it's a pretty common phrase in the like weird post-liberal part of Twitter that I hang out in.
Okay. Yeah. I've never. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. But I mean, they like people like Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. All three of them are more or less, not on ideal picks. They're not Clarence Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see that meme of the person poking Clarence Thomas with a stick that said, "Come on, rule the National Firearms Act unconstitutional"?
No, I did not.
Was the stick figure guy poking, the guy like the stick figure poking something with a stick?
Okay.
You know that meme it was that poking Clarence Thomas and said, "Come on, rule the National Firearms Act unconstitutional." Anyway, sorry.
Can we just get Obergefell overturned first?
I think he's going to do it, dude. I think Clarence Thomas wants to. Did you read? I think Clarence Thomas and Alito want to. Well, did you read their Dobbs opinions?
Parts of it, I think. I have read parts of them.
Both of them were like,
they're going to use or not use. They're going to take the overturn of Roe and basically, use the reasoning for the overturning of Roe, or and basically attach that to all the other
let me look at what the technical term was.
Sort of cases like Obergefell.
There's a specific word for it.
Is it privacy cases or
no? So there's a not
to mention like JD Vance is like, Yale lawyer. So like
he understands the American legal system better than Pence does.
But his office of vice, in the VP spot, is going to basically be like, a hotbed of like, based thought.
Substantive due process was Clarence Thomas's argument in the Dobbs decision, and substantive due process is. Substantive due process is basically the law that is like the judicial theory that you can like invent rights from like
nothing
out of other rights. Like
it
like Wikipedia says that allows courts to establish and protect substantive laws and certain fundamental rights from government interference, even if they are unenumerated elsewhere in the U.S. Constitution. Courts have asserted that such protections come from the due process clauses of the Fifth and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution, which prohibit federal and state governments, respectively, from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Yeah.
I'm confused. How does gay marriage have anything to do with life or liberty?
It doesn't, but abortion also has nothing to do with the right to privacy. So substantive due process is basically like this judicial theory that allows liberals to do whatever the hell they want. And Clarence Thomas was like, that's dumb. We're dumb. I don't want to do that anymore.
Wait, so why, in some sense, why wouldn't that sort of overturn if he overturned? I guess the other
concurred.
Judges,
so his opinion was concurring.
Who was
it wasn't Dobbs only. Dobbs also Alito wrote the court's opinion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Alito's opinion is phenomenal too. Alito's opinion is one of my favorite American judicial documents I've ever read, because Alito does something which should be done in every case of the Supreme Court, but I'm unaware of I've read a lot of major decisions and I haven't seen it unless I'm really not paying attention. But in Alito's Dobbs opinion, he basically is like, well, So if the question is, does the Constitution imply a right to abortion? Then we have to look at the historical context which the Constitution is written in. So let's go back and look at English common law laws on abortion and see if it's like logically, like if it logically follows that there would be a right to an abortion implied in this document based on its contemporary legal documents and the legal documents and its like legal ancestors, like the legal heritage from which it follows. And he's like, nope. Like the actual opinion of the Supreme Court was literally like, well, it's kind of dumb to think that they would ever have done that. Like that's clearly not what they meant. And we know that because England. And I was like, this is awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that would be if Alito took us back to 18th century English law.
No, literally, there were citations in there from like English common law writings from like the 15 and 1600s. The Dobbs decision unironically was citing legal documents from before the United States existed.
Well, yeah. So okay, can we give Alito more people like him? That's the real question.
Honestly, I mean, Alito and Thomas are the coolest guys on the court. They're so fun.
I don't know if they were like this like the whole time. I wonder if they've gotten like more based as they've like been on the court, seeing all the like crap.
I suspect Clarence Thomas has. Like I also suspect Alito has. I would think maybe, yeah. I think also they've probably, because they're not dumb people, they probably are starting to lose faith in like the idea that this court should be non-political and are like just sick and tired of being made political tools, especially because they're two of the longer serving justices now.
Yeah.
Actually, I think isn't Clarence Thomas the longest serving justice now?
Yeah, that would make sense.
And Alito would be
second, probably.
Second.
Or is it Roberts?
No, I think it's one of the others.
No, it can't be, because the other were Obama and Biden picks. Those are the Democratic ones.
There's 3 though.
Yeah, 2 by Obama.
Oh, Obama got 2. That's right.
Yeah, 2 by Obama, 1 by Biden.
Okay, yeah.
Or whoever picked his pick.
Yeah.
And then 1 by so George H.W. Bush picked Clarence Thomas.
Yeah, probably in 91.
Like one of the only good things that H.W. Bush ever did, which probably was to get people off his back.
Roberts has been serving. Holy cow!
What?
Oh my gosh, that's insane. Roberts was appointed to the court September 29th, 2005. And Alito was appointed January 31st, 2006. There was less than 6 months when 2 Supreme Court justices were appointed.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and Obama appointed Sotomayor and Kagan.
Yeah.
And then Trump got Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. Yeah.
And Barrett.
That's hilarious that 6 of the 9 justices have been picked by a Bush or Trump.
Biden's trying to change Supreme Court.
There is a rumor that Biden is there's a rumor that Biden wants to pass a law or wants to propose a constitutional amendment before he's out of office that would put term limits on the court.
I thought there was an announcement today.
Oh, did they actually do it? I've been editing all day.
I thought there was some sort of announcement. Let me check. I don't know if it was I don't know what it exactly was. Let me check. Oh no, Biden put out an opinion piece, which he totally wrote about reforming the Supreme Court.
I kind of want to read that now, but I have
It's
more
it's
editing to do tonight.
it's in the Washington Post though.
I'm not paying for that.
That's what I'm saying.
I wonder if Washington Post patched 12foot.io.
Let me see. SCOTUS News. Um, he has great respect for our institutions and the separation of powers, but he also wants to change. But he wants to change the basically the term limits. He wrote that there needs to be term limits. A binding code of conduct for Supreme Court justices, which is basically to make it,
So Sotomayor is going to get kicked out because she leaked the Dobbs opinion, right?
Yeah, but that's not how it works.
But if there's a binding code of ethics, she has to go.
Binding code of ethics only works on Clarence Thomas.
And Justice Kavanaugh.
Yeah, and Alito.
And Alito.
It's just a tool to.
Binding code of ethics means if you have a penis, you have to leave. That's what it's going to mean.
That would, I guess, get rid of all the conservative justices except for Barrett. What's I guess they're okay with leaving her on as long as they get to fix them. Yeah.
What? Bro, I cannot find. I can't. There's no way. I'm not making an account for you to read this stupid to read this article. Whatever.
Oh, okay. And he also his whole thing was that a president would appoint a justice every 2 years, and each justice would serve 18 years on the court.
Wait, and a president would appoint a justice every 2 years?
Yeah, and that justice would serve 18 years, which I'm not really.
So what's is this gonna? So here's the question:
Does it just make Thomas
does he not want to
out, or is he gonna be?
That's what I'm saying. In? Are they going to grandfather in? Because otherwise, what he's doing is kicking out Thomas and he's kicking Thomas out. That's what he's trying to do. Is he wants Kamala to appoint Thomas's replacement?
Yeah,
and then she would get to replace Thomas and Roberts.
What about Alito?
Well, she would only presumably get to appoint 2.
Oh.
Like if they were to start it, if they were to start it, like if she was to succeed and they were to start it, they would presumably start it from like the longest serving and replace every 2 years. So what he's doing is, and then if Kamala wins, so he thinks they're betting they can get this through. They're betting Kamala would win, and then they're betting she gets a second term. Because if she gets a second term, she also gets Alito.
Yeah.
And Sotomayor, and they're willing to trade 3 for 3. They're willing to trade Sotomayor out to get Thomas, Roberts, and Alito off the court. Specifically, Thomas and Alito.
Yeah, that would be good for them. Do you think Thomas is Thomas in good health conditions? I mean, he is kind of on the chubbier side.
I don't know, man. I feel like he's just built a little differently,
Hopefully he just has sort of God's blessing to stay alive, like if he could just be Numenorian in lifespan, I'd take that. Like if we could get him for 150 years or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's specific. Newsweek is saying that opinion is specifically addressing Clarence Thomas. Like it's specifically just attacking Clarence Thomas. Newsweek is reading it that way.
Yeah, no one
New,
is above the law. I think that's kind of which is funny
that's
because
so dumb because uh, I like clearly somebody is like people. There are people who are above the law.
there are so
Like
many
the
people,
law is not God. Like someone is above it.
but also even like in our system, the way it's set up, so many people get away with so much stuff.
Yeah.
The elite are basically above the law.
I mean, I don't like Schmidt. Like Schmidt is not cool, right? But like I'm not a Schmittian, but sovereign is he who decides the state. Like the sovereign is the one who decides the state of exception. I forget what it is. It's something like that. Like the sovereign is the one who decides the state of exception. Like Schmidt's not a great guy, but he's right about that. Like if you get to decide the state of exception, you are the guy in charge.
Yeah,
You know,
and
if you like the whole point of ruling is you decide when and where the law applies.
and you interpret the law too. So
And you
basically,
interpret the law. Like the
they're
Supreme Court is like if the whole point is yeah, you're actually right. No, yeah, that's a really good point. I've
they're
never
the,
thought of it that way.
they're the closest thing, from our tradition that is above the law.
I think
Theoretically.
I would even say closest. I'd say like it's not possible that they're not above the law.
Well, what I mean is people argue whether or not it was intended for them to have the ability to determine something to be constitutional or not, and
Oh,
that was
Buchanan didn't think so.
that was added to them by Justice Marshall.
Yeah.
So
Buchanan didn't think so.
what I'm saying is, based on sort of precedent, it's become that the justices are basically the only ones above the law, at least within some parameters, but it's not 100% agreed upon, I guess.
Yeah. Buchanan didn't think so. Buchanan actually, I think it's either in, is it in Death of a Superpower or Death of the West?
Now
I remember.
for a second for a while I was thinking you were like talking about James Buchanan for some reason, like the president, but then now
No,
I
no, no, no,
finally
no. I'm
get
talking.
that you're
I'm talking about Patrick Buchanan.
Patrick.
Suicide of a Superpower. Suicide of a Superpower. Buchanan writes about how Congress should like. Oh, this book is titled "Will America Survive to 2025?" Oh, it was written in 2012. Um, you know what? I still would not bet against him. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not betting against him.
Does he say it will end by 2025?
I have no idea. I wouldn't bet. I will. I'm not. I'm not taking the over on that bet. That's not a smart bet to make either way.
It's like he knew.
It's like he knew. Buchanan was right about everything. But in that book at one point, he's talking about how, because this is after Obergefell, because Obergefell was 2010, I want to say, right?
Yeah.
No.
No, it's was it
Obergefell was
2014
2015.
or 2015?
Yeah.
Because
What was the
Obama.
decision about gay marriage?
Yeah, that was Obergefell.
No, which was the one that like said that there wasn't you could allow it.
Wait, what do you mean? I thought
There was a not the one that mandated it across the board.
right.
The one that, because there was one before that allowed states to do it.
Oh, I've never actually heard of that one.
But anyway, in that book, Buchanan is talking about that decision, and he's saying that like Congress could literally just write a law that says this law is not subject to the interpretive powers of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court couldn't do anything about it because they'd have to say that like, because the Constitution doesn't put any limits on what the Congress can pass in a law. Like the plain text of the Constitution puts no limits on what Congress can say in a law except for the amendments, and there's no amendment that says that the Supreme Court, in plain text, that the Supreme Court gets to interpret those laws. So like the plain text of the Constitution, according to the originalist like reading, is actually that Congress could just go, Congress can pass any law and then write in the law, the Supreme Court cannot interpret this. Like
just don't tell that to the Democrats.
yeah. But that was like a real thing Patrick Buchanan advocated for in that book, was just like start passing laws and just tell the Supreme Court they can't overturn them.
But do you think? Well, I mean, you could also do the whole Jackson thing of just ignore them.
Yeah, Justice Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it.
Yeah, I mean the executive power has full power to carry out laws
Yeah,
or not
yeah.
carry out laws. I mean, it's a kind. I mean, it's all kind of jumbled. The executive power theoretically should be able to get away with anything.
Yeah, I guess in theory. Yeah, you're right.
Like, what are they? What's the Supreme Court going to do? Say, FBI, go arrest the president. The president says to FBI guy or director who is supposed to answer only to the president, don't do that. Like from like just a power perspective.
He might have been writing about the Section 8 election in California. I just did some Googling that.
Oh, but wasn't that
because they turned it down, but the Supreme Court of California was the one who allowed it. And so Buchanan may have been writing basically saying like
the idea, just the insanity that California voters voted the gay marriage down, but then the Supreme Court decided, for everyone.
Yeah.
Like that does not make any sense. That Kennedy should be able to decide something that had been universally shunned by voters.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but again, this is just the democratic sort of nonsense. We live in an oligarchy that poses as democracy, but there's no such thing as a democracy.
Trying to grab focus. There we go.
What?
I was trying to grab the focus of the camera and it went out.
Oh.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like there is no, like, we do live in an oligarchy, and this is the other thing. This is the point I was actually trying to make in that tweet that got me in trouble, is that it's not possible for the 2024 election to be it's not a democratic election. So the winner should be whoever has the balls to stand up and say, I'm in charge now. Like the stuff with Google and the stuff with Kamala Harris, like, happening back to back is like pretty, like, it's pretty clear to me that that's programming the masses, and I can't figure out why nobody sees it.
Well, interesting. I mean, I just came out with a video about basically 16th century history, and the media itself, the origins of the media were these, papers, and were these like pamphlet stuff that was basically, trying to change people's opinions the same way as the media and government does today.
Well, yeah, because they had to compete with each other.
But this was the first time, the 16th century was the first time that politicians had to compete with each other
exactly.
For the public.
Yeah, for the approval of the public.
Yeah, and not necessarily like all the public, because many people couldn't vote, but of the voting population, they were trying to. They were now having to compete with their adversaries, and it wasn't, before that. Basically, the king made the government in some ways, not a partisan government, because there were no political parties.
Yeah, and if the only time you like, I have to be very careful what I say so that it doesn't stop. This is all speaking purely from political theory of how monarchies functioned. I am not suggesting, this is unironic, like, I'm not suggesting anybody participate in politics in America this way.
Well, you
but
you can also just refer to it as the 16th century.
Yeah,
in his 16th century context or a 15th century context.
Yeah, in the medieval context, the way you got rid of a guy who was really bad and harming you was you went and got rid of him. I'll just say that. But here's the thing. That sounds like it would be harder and therefore less likely for people to stand up against the tyrant. But if everyone knows that the way you get rid of a tyrant is by getting rid of the tyrant, then they know that if they have a tyrant, what they have to do to get rid of him. If everyone is under the illusion that if they just say, please stop, in the form of putting a piece of paper in a box, and they do it enough that eventually the tyrant will stop, then they don't realize that to get rid of a tyrant, you have to get rid of a tyrant. And that is all purely hypothetical, and I'm not suggesting anything by it. And I mean that sincerely. Like, it's not like I'm not saying like, oh, I'm joking, haha, meme in Minecraft. No, like I'm saying like, don't do any of this. I'm making a statement on the difference between the mindset of the populace in a medieval like monarchy versus the mindset of a populace in a modern, like a postmodern democracy. Like that's what I'm saying. I'm talking about that difference. I'm merely pointing out the difference. I'm not suggesting anything, and I mean that sincerely. I'm just laughing because of how risky it was to do this, and there's no reward. It was just super high risk and super low reward.
Okay. I mean, I talk about the historical context all the time. So
yeah, but I was basically saying like we can't get rid of tyrants. So
yeah, but tyrant, you're not saying anybody specific or anything is a tyrant. You're just saying theoretically.
Yeah, in the theoretical context of democracy, you can't get rid of a tyrant by voting harder.
Well, that's the whole premise of democracy is that, vote, that there can't be a tyrant, basically.
Yeah.
So there, which is wrong because there obviously are tyrants. I mean, just ask Maduro.
Yeah.
In Venezuela, who
did you see how similar the Venezuelan election graph looked to the Wisconsin graph?
I did not know.
Oh my gosh. There was a couple straight lines. I'll just say that there was a couple completely vertical lines. And then as you were pushing record, I saw on Twitter that Maduro did a press conference where he called Elon Musk his number one enemy in the world and said Elon Musk wanted to send space rockets to destroy Venezuela. And Elon's like tweeting in Spanish at him, and it's like, what is going on?
It's just hilarious that Elon Musk is almost everyone's, like, or not everyone's, but like a sizable like group seemingly enemy, even though I would say he's one of the most amiable guys for a lot of what they want to achieve.
Oh, sorry. I'm listening. I just figured out what specific issue Patrick Buchanan was talking about in this book because I have the book on my I have the ebook. He's specifically talking about the Supreme Court having an erroneous interpretation of the 14th Amendment that allows for birthright citizenship. Okay. And he's saying that Congress should just pass a law that says there's no birthright citizenship and this is not subject to review by any federal court.
I also could see that being like overturned by by Vance judges, birthright citizenship.
Yeah, but more the point I'm making is just he does say explicitly like
they can just write a law that says
just write a law and say you can't do anything about this. And I was like, I remember listening to this book for the first time because I was listening to it when I was working night shifts years ago, and I was like, that's awesome. Why do we not do that?
You can't do anything about this.
Yeah.
Signed Congress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wish like the vice president had a little more like power.
Yes and no.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think there are probably arguments for both, but it just seems like doesn't make sense from a like, why isn't the VP just basically the Speaker of the House, but for the Senate?
Why does he do that?
Why isn't he? No, what?
Oh,
No,
why isn't he?
like he doesn't have. I mean, he like presides over the Senate, but he doesn't actually have the same powers. Like the Senate is supposed to be. I mean, it was the sort of somewhat not aristocratic in like a noble sense, but aristocratic in the elite sense. It was supposed to be the aristocratic house of the
Yeah,
United
but
States.
Britain doesn't even have that anymore. So
Did the House of Lords? The House of Lords isn't abolished, but it is pathetic.
I think they're making the House of Lords elected.
Well, it it wasn't there. It wasn't worth much, anyways. They had already been nominating. It was basically life, not lifelong, but but it was basically just political appointments whenever the losing group was on the way out.
Yeah, but I think you could claim your right through heritage still.
They were already getting rid of lifelong peers,
Ah, that's sad.
or at least a certain amount of them. So it already wasn't like it would be great if the House of Lords went back to what it was, like the actual nobility, and also not having sort of the female peers whole thing involved as well, but just sort of the standard like original, you know, what was it, the early 1900s at least, go back to the peers of that time,
Yeah,
because they had blocked basically a big liberal motion by the liberal government, basically with some sort of economic plan or budget. And basically the king basically was like, here, do this and you'll be able to get around the House of Lords. And then from then on, the House of Lords became toothless.
that's sad.
Yeah. So that's but the whole point is the vice president, like, it would make a lot of sense, and it would work really well probably with the fact that the president's supposed to more or less set the agenda, at least by our understanding of the government and by our voting, that the vice president would then oversee what bills actually get to the floor of the Senate.
Yeah, yeah. I would actually like to see a system where the vice president is closer to like what a prime minister is, where and we push. I'll put like take a bunch of like the executive. A bunch of like the executive agencies and make them legislative agencies, like agencies of the legislative branch, and they're underneath of the vice president.
Well, would that, I mean, wouldn't that just lessen the power of the president?
Yeah, but it would also put the. I also think just for the like it would also make a big difference in the minds of. I think it would be a cultural victory because it would make a big difference in the minds of the American people to realize that the legislative branch is the one actually legislating. Because I think right now people just think of like Congress as us, like they don't realize that it's actually the one supposed to be making the laws. Like people don't understand that the legislative branch is supposed to legislate because the executive branch just legislates whenever it wants. And I think it would go a long way to changing the like perspective and outlook and understanding of the American system if we were to put a bunch of those agencies under the branch of the work they're actually doing. Like if you're legislating, you should be an agency of the legislation.
You could also just eliminate most of them.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. Also, Chevron got overturned, so
Yeah, I mean I don't even know. Like Chevron should basically take away a lot of at least like if it was actually enforced or something like that. Which that's the
Chevron
problem.
technically overturns the NFA.
What is that national? What is that?
Firearms Act.
Firearms Act.
Like the law that the ATF cites when they just remove stuff, like when they just say this is illegal now, that's the NFA. And Chevron technically like takes that right away.
Yeah, I mean I would love to like see like all the different laws that should be overturned basically by
The lack of Chevron.
by the lack of Chevron. It's kind of sad that this like the
But the
Supreme
problem is
Court.
somebody will have to be willing to like risk their risk life in prison to do that. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but the Supreme. It's sad that the Supreme Court can't just like do that themselves because
Right.
they already declared it. So
Yeah.
shouldn't they just make up a list of all the things that?
Our
Uh,
Chevron and say these are gone. Yeah,
yeah,
ideally, but the way the system works, like for example, the NFA, some guy's gonna have to like make an illegal machine gun and get arrested and challenge it. That's what's gonna have to happen. That's not a joke. Like that's
no,
actually what
yeah.
has to happen.
No, but that's how insane it is. Is that's how laws get changed by the Supreme Court.
Some guy needs to build an illegal SBR.
Is that the Supreme Court basically needs to save somebody from lifetime in prison in order for the Supreme Court to make sure the executive branch knows that what they already determined is what they determined.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that, it's nonsense. It should be, okay. If the
I
Supreme Court,
guess in theory, a state could pass a law. Like, I guess in theory, a state could pass a law like how Dobbs happened, where like states just started passing laws like outlawing abortion to get Supreme Court cases. So I guess in theory, a state could pass a law and just be like, the NFA is null and void in Missouri or whatever, and like,
yeah.
I think the Missouri state, like Missouri the state attorney general of Missouri is suing Google, I think, actually.
Wouldn't it almost actually make the federal government inclined not to sue Missouri then? Because then they know that it's going to be brought up.
Yeah, but that would be the best solution, though.
Well, no, but it'd be good for like the federal government if it's say under Biden, under a Democratic organization group, is not going to then if they know it's going to get knocked down, they might not sue Missouri.
Right, but that would be good then because then other states would be like, oh, we can just.
Yes, but it will be bad for like all the residents that are in Democrat states. That's good.
Well, move. Like I don't.
I understand.
No, I actually feel bad when people tell Californians to move because it's like, no, that's their home. They should be allowed to like. They should. Their home shouldn't suck.
We should not be the people of trying to like shame people into moving places.
Yeah.
We should be the people trying to get communities built in all areas.
Yeah. Don't be a rootless elite.
America is a people, and it's not just.
It's not an idea.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an idea,
and Ben Shapiro knows exactly what that means, and he was lying.
Yes. He knows that line is most likely, trying to refute stuff he said.
Yeah.
Angled towards people like him.
Yeah.
So he knows it. He just, I think like Ben Shapiro is probably just trying to hang on to any level of credibility that he can muster. Like he's trying to
I don't know what he's doing. I don't know.
Like keep as many people in his like mindset or circle as possible, because if he goes too far hard against certain things, then even more people will flock away from him. Will abandon him. Which I mean, I think a lot of people did with his like crazy stuff around like Gaza and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have no idea what he's doing, to be honest. I don't pay any attention to him. I only hear about him when he does something that like one of my post-liberal friends is like, bro, this kid.
That brings up a perfect segue. How would you define post-liberal, since JD Vance considers himself a post-liberal? So for anybody who doesn't know what that is, how would you define that?
That's a great question. There's a new Polity article on why we like the word post-liberal has been totally co-opted by like nerds. Are
you telling me New Polity aren't nerds?
They're not like I mean like as an insult. By like Vermeule and his ilk, who are just like Vermeule and Deneen.
Well, but isn't Vance referencing Deneen? Isn't that what he means when he says post-liberal?
Yeah, Vance is better than most people, but Deneen is like Vance is better than most people, but I'd still rather he like listen to Jacob Imam than Deneen.
Sure, I'm not
and
saying
Andrew Jones than Deneen, but like, and especially Vermeule. Vermeule is, ooh, yeah. Post-liberal is basically the idea that every government and system of government in the world today falls into the system of liberalism, which is that the individual is the core unit of a society, and that governments are contracts with the people, and that the government, like the nation state, has the power to rule over the people, and it's done through threat of violence if you don't obey, and that the power derives from a system of laws, and that there's a social contract and all that kind of stuff that you find in Locke, Hobbes, John Stuart Mill. You find it very early in some of the ways Machiavelli talks about rulership.
What is it? The
Prince.
Yeah, no, but what is it? The tabula rasa, the blank slate.
Yeah, tabula rasa, blank slate theory. So that's liberalism, right? Like that's the concept of liberalism. That's the paradigm of liberalism. And post-liberalism is the notion that we should just not be left or right, but just leave the liberal system. Now that's in theory what it means. I think a lot of the guys, especially like the really famous ones like Vermeule that identify as post-liberals, are just liberals. Like Vermeule specifically is like, the way we get to the post-liberal paradise is by taking over America and putting our guys in the bureaucracy. And it's like, dog, I don't think you understand what you're talking about. Like that is clearly not post-liberal. Like that's just liberal for my people, or for like people, like liberal in the way I want. Like that's just like, I'm the guy in charge of the liberal government now, not like actual post-liberalism. Like you're not exiting the liberal paradigm.
Yeah, you're not exiting the system.
You're not exiting the system if you're just replacing. Yeah,
you're like taking the liberal system and just using it to
exactly
possibly other means.
Yeah,
or sorry, possible other ends, but that's not necessarily post-liberal.
Right. So post-liberalism is, let's just burn it all down. No, I'm just kidding. That one is a joke. Post-liberalism is like, we have to leave this system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And specifically Catholic post-liberalism, or what I would more often just say is like Catholic politics, is that the family is the core unit of society, not the individual, not like, and that there is not like, people are not blank slates.
Could you say families?
No, I would say the family as the domestic church. Okay. And then up from that, you have communities of families.
Okay.
And then you have communities of communities. And then, and the main, what I would say is the main, what my biggest problem with the American government, or the American legal system, or I call it the legal machine that is called the United States government, is the phrasing I like to use. The legal machine that is called the United States government is that it is in complete violation of subsidiarity, and it was from the moment the Constitution was written. And this idea, there is this like sort of popular idea in some circles that like the Constitution was actually based in subsidiarity pilled. And it's like, no, the whole point of the Constitution was that the Articles of Confederation were based in subsidiarity pilled, because it was like, the federal government needs all of the states to consent, like needs the state to consent to be able to govern your state. So the higher authority is contingent on the lower. That's subsidiarity. The United States Constitution that replaced the Articles of Confederation is, we get to do what we want. Like there are certain things we're going to do top down. That's not subsidiarity. And so from the start, it was not subsidiarity, and it's gotten worse over time to the point, and I'm going to say something that will sound very libertarian, but it is correct, to the point that, and we've gotten to the point now where not only are the higher authorities not contingent upon the lowers, but the lower authorities are just subsidiarities, not subsidy, but yeah, they're like branches, you know. They're all Pizza Hut. They're all franchises. Like how you franchise a Pizza Hut. They're all tried out. Pizza the Hut.
They're local Chick-fil-A's.
They're all local Chick-fil-A's that are dependent on the corporate Chick-fil-A. And so every act of power by your local Chick-fil-A is actually an act of power by corporate Chick-fil-A. So when the local Chick-fil-A person says, "My pleasure," because you were going 85 in a 20-mile-an-hour zone, even if you deserve it, which in that case, leave me alone. I'm trying. No, I'm just kidding. 80 in a school zone? Bro, I'm just vibing. Imagine. No. So, but to like not destroy the analogy and like make this make sense, like every act of power, even if there's like one police officer in your town of 500, right? There's just the sheriff. He's the only police officer in your town of 500. And he pulls you over for going, 45 and a 30, and he pulls you over for going 45 and a 30. That act of power, like him writing you that ticket, is an act of power of the federal government. And I know that sounds really libertarian, but like, let me explain it. Like if you were to run from him and successfully do so, he's going to call the county. And if you evade the county and successfully do so, the county is going to call the state, right? Now you got the staties on your tail. Now let's say you successfully avoid the staties and you cross the state boundary, okay? Well, now the staties are going to call the feds, and like until you're exiting the United States, you're never actually outside of the overarching authority of the federal government.
Are you even when you exit the United States?
Only in certain places. I mean, Snowden is arguably outside of the United States authority, but but even then he's so affected by it that he has to live in Russia.
Well, there's still the CIA.
And the CIA too. Like, but the point I'm making is that, and how are they like convincing you that you have to pay this ticket if you run if you keep running? Like, let's say you don't pay the ticket. Well, what they're doing is they're like, well, we're going to put you in prison. And it's like, no, you're not. I'm going to defend myself from being put in a prison cell. And what they're going to do is they're going to use force. And like the type of force being used is militarized. Like this is something, so this sounds very libertarian and very leftist, but it is true. We have a militarized, pretty much every police force in the United States, local, county, state, or otherwise, is a militarized police force. And what I mean by that is just that it's organized in such a way that it's like a bunch of armed people in ranks, like walking around, making decisions, giving orders to the lower ranks. And like, that's, it's structured like a military, and they're all armed. And that's how they, like, the ultimate threat is, I'm going to shoot you.
In other words, literally just the global American empire is the enforcement tool
of every level. Yeah.
Every level of like control that governments have. Almost to
any act of power in the United States, it does not matter what level is acting at the power, is the federal government pointing a gun in your face, and threatening your life. Every act of power is an act of the federal government pointing a gun at your face. You cannot have a Catholic society if that is the case. End of story.
In some sense, it's also the not just in America, but the global American empire has their guns pointed at people who live in completely different countries' faces as well.
Yeah, this is a red pill that most people aren't ready for, but standing armies are also not Catholic. So have fun with that one. Have fun. I can't wait to get hate for that one. But yeah, standing armies are not Catholic. Like if you have a standing army, your society isn't Catholic. So Post-liberalism is basically just the whole like let's just leave the idea of the social contract enforced by force. Like let's leave the idea of the enforcement mechanism and let's build a society from the family out instead of from a big gun down. And yeah, I mean Vance is, I don't know that he's like fully on board with like, you know, I think the only way to save the American people is for the legal system known as the United States government to be destroyed.
Would that be so that's not just would that be basically secessionist?
I don't know, maybe. I don't think that I don't think that it's I don't think the legal the legal machine that we call the government is savable at this point. And it's especially not savable if you want to like do right by the actual human beings made in the image and likeness of God who live underneath of it.
All right. Well, I
I
think
that's really extreme. That's what I got in trouble for though. That's what I got in trouble for on Twitter. As I said that.
to be honest, I feel like most libertarians would be pretty happy with what you're saying.
Yeah, but I said the way to do it is for Trump to just become a dictator.
Yeah, dictators in Rome were was not a it was not a criticizing word.
No, it wasn't. And also, it was what happened in the fall of Rome. Right after, like, when the Republic starts to collapse, the next thing you get is Caesar. So we're just waiting on Caesar, guys. I don't know if you guys realize that.
And then Emperor Baron.
Dude, don't get my hopes up, dude.
Well, but Emperor Baron, I mean, I guess what you could say is that the empire eventually collapses into sort of small Catholic kingdoms, basically.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, if you think major, like, top-down empiric governments are Catholic, like, watch what happened when Rome became Catholic. Rome fell apart when it became Catholic because like it was not possible for it to be like centralized and ruled from the top down as Catholic.
I don't. Yeah, I've never really studied the fall of the Roman Empire well enough, but I mean, it did survive in the East though for good 500 years.
Yeah, but it also was not like the people had more rights too.
Yeah, I'm not saying.
Yeah.
Well, so like an empire isn't inherently sort of this liberal.
Right. Yeah.
Order.
Exactly.
So, and Rome was had some some bad, really bad elements that were more or less being purged over time. But also, I would say the barbarians, even though they considered themselves like successors to Rome, like they didn't consider themselves outside of Rome.
I have no idea. I don't know anything about Rome.
Okay.
One of my buddies is literally in Italy right now because he's doing archaeology on. He's doing an archaeological research trip on enfranchisement in the Roman Republic. So.
Yeah. Well, so there's an interesting video I listened to a while ago, and it was basically the question of whether or not like Christianity was the woke of the Roman Empire.
Yes.
And the two guys one guy was on the no, one guy was on the yes. So
yes, but we were right, and the woke is not.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, that's the premise, is that, but it's like the same type of like dramatic change, I guess, or same kind of influence that would that changed Roman society so much that maybe it wasn't able to function the way it had. So then it collapsed. But then the other guy was arguing against that premise. So not that it's woke in the sense of the same sort of, I don't know, kind of like temperament.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's actually interesting. I think maybe yes. I don't
Well,
know.
anyways, so I haven't made my mind necessarily. I feel like I want to learn more before I say yes or no on that question. But well, so Vance is our guy.
Vance is our guy.
Yes,
He's not pro-choice.
yes, good,
Uh,
good. Uh,
he wants to tax childless people and make them pay their fair share and give families tax breaks. And Hillbilly Elegy is great. And if you grew up working class and white, you should read it. I definitely didn't cry at all during during the one part. I won't spoil it. During one part of the book, there was not a part of the book where I cried. That totally didn't happen. Um,
well, maybe
no,
maybe we should do a whole sort of episode in the future about Hillbilly Elegy.
oh, I'd be so down for that. I loved it. I thought it was phenomenal.
It is you know, uh, his
How far
language.
are you?
I'm like within the last two chapters or whatever.
Okay,
He's he's
you've gotten through most of the good stuff.
yeah, he's at Ohio State, I think.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
language is, I think the language is, I think he should have used it. I really do. I think I would have been offended if he had censored it.
Well, it's also like he wrote the book. What is it, like 6 years before he converted to Catholicism?
Yeah, but I also, if he had wrote it as a Catholic, still would have been offended if he hadn't used it. I think.
No, I'm just saying his mind. I'm not saying he shouldn't necessarily. I'm just
Oh,
saying
okay.
we have to understand. Even if we were to criticize, even if you are to criticize him for his language, like if you wanted to, not that you want to. Um,
All the language he uses, like 95% of it is just him quoting his like
yeah,
hillbilly grandparents and his drug addict mother. And it's
yeah.
like, if he had censored that in trying to tell the story of his childhood for like the sake of like pearl clutching sensibilities on language, I'd have been like, this is like weak and lame.
Yes, I'm just saying that he wasn't even a Catholic, anyways, at that time.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah, fair
like
enough.
and there's a whole controversy about something that may have been in the first edition, but then was taken out. Anyways,
It was not there.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, and it was not there.
Okay.
It wasn't there.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's not in. It's definitely not in the current edition. I just don't know. Um. Yeah. Anyways.
No, it was an AI picture, I think, or somebody just
Okay.
like, yeah.
Gotcha. Anyways,
It
so that.
definitely wasn't there.
But anyway, so Vance is our guy. I think if he like, it will be really interesting to see what he does as vice president if he becomes VP. Like if he gets elected.
Yeah, what he makes his core issue.
What?
What he makes like his core issue, or what he gets
Not just
assigned.
that. Like what? Like who he supports. Like going down ballot and stuff like that. Who he helps raise up, and sort of the intellectuals that he puts around him.
I wonder who my congressman is. Maybe I should run for Congress if JD Vance wins. If JD Vance wins in 2024, maybe I should run for Congress in 2026.
That would be great. Like it would just be one of those things. Like if it just sounds like if I could work for the guy, like that'd be the one guy at the moment that I'd want to work for.
Yeah, I will say that
on the Hill, or
after
at the White House or in the president.
after reading his book, he's the one politician I've ever read that I didn't think like just like had no negative feelings towards people like me, but actually likes people like me.
Also,
You know what I mean?
he seems real.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
is very different from every other politician, pretty much.
Tucker's complaining all the time about how politicians are fake, and Tucker's endorsement of Vance was basically he's the only guy on the Hill who I think has an actually good relationship with his wife behind the scenes. And I was like, that's a hell of an endorsement, honestly.
I do pray and hope that he converts his wife.
Yeah, me too.
That's kind of an unfortunate thing, but it's not really. It doesn't really change much about his his ability to be vice president or ability to be president in the future. Especially, we're not anywhere close to sort of a like Christian nation.
Yeah.
In any capacity. So it's when he's a good first step, I would say, onto anything like that. But it would be it would be like, I encourage everyone to pray for the conversion of his wife, because that'd be pretty epic. Because then
Usha converting would be a huge boon for the country, honestly.
it would be also great to for like voters as well, just like
Yeah.
from the perspective of like trust. I feel like because she's, there, just because she's also like Indian, and she's Hindu, she doesn't really like fit into most people's expectations or desires
Hmm.
from uh the second lady, basically. Not that the second lady has much attention or anything like that, but if you want a successor, if Vance is going to be the successor to Trump, it'd be really good if she was at least a Christian.
Yeah, I would be interested to see what she would do as first lady. That would actually be very, very interesting.
I'd like to. I wonder, like, it'd be interesting to hear her. Like, I guess I haven't listened to her at all.
Did she give an RNC speech?
I don't know. Does she actually like? Does she share her husband's like almost beliefs? Even if not religiously. That would be an interesting question to answer. Because there's
I have
always,
no
I always
idea.
think there's a question with Melania too. Like, does Melania like what's her political
Oh,
opinions?
Melania is very Catholic. I think Melania, if anything, probably tells Don to like stop talking about abortion.
Yeah, I don't know. But that would be. I mean, so it's kind of, it would make sense that she would be almost more right wing than her husband, and that's why she's so sort of quiet in some sense.
Yeah.
But also, she kind of takes on sort of the idea that most right wingers have in sort of the first lady, in as the wife of the president, as being very like you know hostess, like like very very quiet, and being like maybe behind the scenes, maybe has some influence, but isn't the person that you've elected to become the leader. like
Yeah.
like Jill Biden is the opposite of that.
Yeah, Jill, I think one of the best arguments that Jill was running the show or like doing way more than she should have been is that she had no like first lady agenda. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
really?
Yeah,
That
like
means,
there was like there like do you
yeah,
remember
yeah.
one? Like Michelle had the school lunches thing
You mean
and
he hated
Melania
fat children, right?
yeah, Michelle hated fat kids
Yeah.
and Melania hated kids who couldn't draw and like Jill just I'm pretty sure it was school like school art classes.
Are you sure
I'm
for
90% sure.
Jill just might have been hates kids?
Jill, I think Jill just hated Joe. Um,
You
yeah. Melania also, as First Lady, had the best White House Christmas decoration decor
Oh yeah,
like
that was
in decades. It was so good. It was ridiculous.
pretty spectacular. And then the White House under Biden, uh, their Christmas stuff was disturbing.
Oh, Melania hated kids addicted to opioids. Melania had a three-pronged children's well-being thing. So she hated fat kids.
She went
She
beyond Michelle.
she had three prongs. I hate fat kids. I hate kids who can't use the internet, online safety, and opioid abuse. I think it's just I hate kids who's like I don't like parental. I don't like.
I hate kids that have bad parents.
Yeah, I think that's no. She just hates. She's talking about parental opioid abuse.
Okay.
But
That
like
was
the heading, you should look at this website because this is after we get off. You should look at this website because it is so funny. It's like it's the three prongs of the be best three pillars, and then the third one just says like the first one says well-being, the second one says online safety, and then the third one is just opioid abuse. Like the three prongs of the Be Best campaign by First Lady Melania Trump were well-being, online safety, and opioid abuse. Unironically,
that's hilarious.
that was a real thing the First Lady did.
Well, let's leave it there.
Yeah.
Be the best.
Be your best.
Be
Well,
your best.
be safe online. Be well and abuse.
Abuse. No, do not. Do not.
Don't do that.
Do not do that. No, do not.
I'm gonna send you this. I'm not kidding.
Well,
You have to
Josiah.
put this in the description so people don't think I'm making it up because it literally just says opioid abuse.
Okay, well, Josiah, thank you for coming on the show to discuss
Yeah.
Vance. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope everyone's enjoyed themselves.
Yeah, it's been a great time.
Okay, well, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and God bless everyone. Bye.